Learn AI and adopt it, or you'll be replaced by it. Stop consuming social media. Create. You have 3,800 weeks in your lifetime. Never argue with stupid. If you have a partner that spends money, divorce them, leave them. Until you've got a Reddit forum about you, you haven't made it. People do believe that job security is a real thing, and it's totally fabricated.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. For anyone that doesn't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I don't go by any title at all. I'm Aaron Knightley. I'm a normal guy that was driven to change his life because I had a son at a very early age. I was a wild card when I was younger. I come from a working class background. I've always had an entrepreneurial flair from a young age, and I didn't like the workplace. So entrepreneurship and building something for myself was my answer, and I'm sure we're going to cover it off today.
You just touched point on having an entrepreneurial spirit since you were very young. Can you tell me, how did you figure that out?
Well, I figured it out early on because I was always trying to make money, very much that whole cliche sort of, selling things at school. And I really was, I know a lot of people say that, but actually I was selling dust caps. I was selling sweets. I would buy and sell all bits and pieces. As soon as I was old enough to start an eBay shop myself, back then it was eBay, before PayPal destroyed the fees and all this kind of stuff. And I was always trying to make my own money because I knew how hard my mum and dad were working and to provide what they did. And still at times that wasn't enough. So I just knew that money from an early age was an escape. It was never a case of I wanted to spend it on nice things. I just knew it was an escape to have more of a comfortable life. So, and the fact that my character is very confident, I'm very outspoken, I've got a lot to say, I'm a bit gobby at times, and I was a bit of a wild card. So you throw all that together, and I suppose you got me.
I see. And you said you saw your parents, how hard they are working. Was that what made you think that the 9-to-5 system wasn't for you, or how did you even come to that?
Well, I think because I saw my mum and dad work so hard, I knew that, you really had to put in a lot of effort to get a lot back was not really the case. So I was seeing a lot of output, but not a lot was coming back. And I suppose when I started to go through the system, I think a lot of us who have an entrepreneurial flair, I think something's not right. Like if you take it back to the classroom, I was the kid that would sort of look out the window and I just had no interest. And then seeing mum and dad work so hard, but still struggle, I don't know, was that just being conscious at an early age? I just knew something wasn't right. I knew there was an unfair exchange going on, but maybe I couldn't quite work it out. But I did work out that, well, if you make your own money or you can make more money, the problems that I was seeing, surely they're not going to happen. So again, it's a form of escape, I suppose. And I was just always thinking about money. I really was from a very early age.
I get that. I was also thinking about money from a very early age, and I was exactly the kind of kid that you described in class. I would just look out the window thinking that something was missing. I couldn't really put my finger on it until I was about 20, but there was something that was just not there for me. And then speaking of thinking how you see yourself, do you know what would be the psychological difference of people needing a job or an income?
Well, I think just before touching on that, just something you said, I think early on you realise if you're not a conformer, you're normally not going to fit in the system. So going back to, look, if you're confident and you don't conform, that's not what society wants. Society as a whole, within the workplace, the schooling system, just in general, they want followers. And I think early on by the way that you act within a classroom, whether you're going to conform or not. And I just never conformed. I just really didn't, apart from if my dad would lose his temper, which was very rare. That was the only time I would conform, because you should have an element of being scared of your dad a little bit. That's the one man in your life you should fear to some degree, because, there's that male figure. But I didn't conform in any other areas because I was very confident. So that doesn't fit within a system. So that happened all throughout the formal education, but then more so when you go into the workplace. Again, it's conformity even more, like suppression. And I don't do well being suppressed. So I didn't necessarily know that business was going to be my future, but I knew I wasn't willing to conform in anything. I never have been. So that's kind of, I suppose, what we'll dive into, but that's what's led me on this path.
I see that. And I think having an element of feeling trapped is what really pushes you to discover who you are. And some people are very fortunate to know from very young age what they want to do, and they will go and pursue that. But like myself, or probably like yourself, there are also people that don't know exactly what they want or how to get it, but they know what they don't want. They know that this is broken and it's not really working for me.
Yeah.
I need to change the environment, or I need to change my path somehow.
Yeah. All of those are elements that add up to where you end up. Like, I know life is a sequence of choices. And I suppose I was lucky. I look back at my journey, and I talk about this a lot in my YouTube videos, is that when I was in the workplace from an early age, 19, 20, right? And I had my son, as soon as I turned 20, I learned a lot of hard lessons at an early age. I learned that you'll be thrown under the bus by co-workers. I realised that this is a game of poker that's very, very hard to play, and it's very political. That's mentally straining. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of competition. I understood that it was I found out very quick that the corporate employed world, the workplace, is a situational environment that we all end up in, and then it's every man or woman for himself. And I learned very hard lessons early on. And at the time, that was really stressful. And I was the only income for me and my partner, and now a brand new baby. And I really feared for losing that income. And I did a recent video on my YouTube where I actually went back to my old workplace, and I stood on the exact spot that I rang my partner. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm never going to rely on someone else paying me. I'm going to build something because I can't go through this stress and being made to feel like I was so little of worth and value. So I just, I set about educating myself, and I think those lessons people don't learn until 30, 40, 50. I was lucky to go through the hardship at a really early age, which made me very, very conscious and wake up. And then at 20, I just pursued learning everything I could and self-educating myself about business and money and everything. So, yeah.
In that position, did you have any money on the side before you quit? Or how much money do you think someone should have on the side before they just quit their job completely to start something else?
Well, that moment I was referring to, I was 21. So in just over a year, I had a lot happen to me, and I really saw the workplace for what it was. Again, I find it a blessing that so much had happened in such a short period of time. But I was in a workplace that was super toxic. So everything that could have happened. And then I remained for another 7 years. And no, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that obviously I had to become financially independent. I didn't know what business model. I didn't know how to build a network. I had no money at the time. I had nothing to my name. My parents weren't able to help me out financially. So it really was the building blocks, learning about money management, savings, investing. I started literally from scratch. And one of the things that I did immediately was get my money together. But to answer your question, I ended up, when I left my job at 27, I could have left at about 24, 25. So I went on a very aggressive life change. I had about 11,500 in an emergency fund. I had about 4,500 in what I call a maintenance fund. And then I had a couple of grand in a floating fund. And I probably had a couple of grand in cash. But I was also bringing in my own money at that point. So I would always say you should at least have 6 to 12 months full salary. And then, best way to describe it, have a maintenance fund to replace your fridge, a cooker, a full MOT, 4 brand new tyres, and I don't know, some tiles fall off your house and you've got to replace them. Whatever that value is, that plus a year's worth of salary, then you're in a good position.
And to circle back to the beginning, you said this whole process was prompted by the fact that you woke up one day and you said that I cannot deal with this stress anymore. However, you were being paid, you had your salary, you had a secure job, so to say. But I think a lot of people confuse salary with security.
Yeah.
Could you explain people a little bit of a difference in that, and how salary does not necessarily mean that you will be financially secure?
Yeah, I mean, security now is totally fabricated. It doesn't exist. I think going back just to when I really had that wake-up call was to realise that at the time I was naive and young, and I thought I could trust someone who I'd become really friendly with, to then literally be thrown under the bus and have all these allegations made against me falsely, like totally made up. And so I was like, what do you set to gain? And that was a threat to me and my family. So it wasn't just a threat to me. You're now like my family. I'm the only income. That was just a wow. This is like stab season. You know, everyone, we all have to wear a vest because this is crazy. So, and then having a child, I think just touching on that, because that's a real mindset thing for the right people. That was something so much bigger than me. So having a child, I was a very selfish person, but having my son is my everything, my world. I only do. Even this is all for my son. You know, it's nothing now really is driven for what I want. I'm not materialistic. I don't need for things. So then I had that driver. I had my fire. I had my reason why. But the whole security thing is a total myth because loyalty doesn't buy security. I mean, the day and age that we live in now, look, AI is moving incredibly fast. I mean, that's a whole topic in itself. But convenience, employers want convenience. They want predictability. They want the yes person. They're not bothered about. They're not bothered about serving the employee. They want to gain as much as they can, and as soon as that ends, as soon as they can't get any more out of you, or you're not relevant, security goes out the window. And I think if more people could realise that, especially the day and age that we live in, people would realise that they need to start thinking for themselves and having that element of financial independence. Because as soon as you are irrelevant and you don't serve the cause anymore, or you upset someone, or a change in management comes in, or AI comes in, it'll be one email and you're out. And that's incredibly dangerous. And it actually shocks me that I have to sit here and say it again. And I say it all the time. But people do believe that job security is a real thing, and it's totally fabricated.
I think I've seen that firsthand when the pandemic hit. And we all think that everything was sorted. You think you have a plan until something outside of your control hits.
Yeah.
And then exactly every man or woman for themselves. So if you're into the point that you would like to start making steps towards your financial freedom, what would be the best way to build your first £1,000 or £10,000 outside your job? How would you start this journey?
Well, my answer would have been different 5-10 years ago. But my answer now is you can make money from anything. So anyone listening to this thinking, well, yeah, I'd quite like to make my first 1,000. I mean, you can do anything. You can literally make money doing anything. But it all starts with how bad you want it. Because I think, you know, we talk a lot about the money, and I have conversations where people approach me and they're like, oh, I really want to earn my own money and I'd love to have this. And I always go back to, yeah, but do you really? Like, why? I love to ask the question, why? Why do you want to make £1,000? Why do you want 10,000? And typically the answer is, well, I don't like my job. Well, not a lot of people like their job, but it doesn't mean that you have what it takes. So I actually will always start by asking, you have to understand if you've got what it takes, because making £100 or making £1,000 in a month could be the same effort, the same output. But have you got what it takes? The resilience, the drive, the confidence, the get up and go, the being able to be rejected, keep pushing when it all just looks like none of it's working, and that self-belief. And you really have to do like a self-evaluation before the money. And I think you need to have a big reason why. Because if you want to make money, but you're still in a job where you're like, I'd quite like to make money, but my job's all right. I mean, I can stick it out for another year. If you are so driven by wanting to get out so badly because it scares you so much to remain in the same place and to be in the same position 12 months later, and that is not an option. Making £1,000 is so achievable for that person because the drive is there, the fire. So I think that's the first thing. And then making money, well, you have to do two things, and that is commercialize yourself. So you start with yourself. How can you make you, the human being, commercialized? And what I mean by that is, how do you build your brand? And I know that's totally overused, but us, the actual individuals, we have so many outlets. You can just start a podcast. You can literally jump online. Everyone can pick up a phone. Everyone can talk in front of a camera. You can share your experiences. You can talk about hardship. You can build a following, and you can leverage and sell pretty much everything if you know how to commercialize. And then the second part of making money is positioning yourself. How are you seen as the go-to person where someone either wants to learn from you or they want to buy the thing that you're about to sell? And those are two things that I've just done very well for me personally. So my answer on building a cash flowing income would have been different 5 years ago. Now it's a case of step outside your comfort zone, get a phone, get a laptop, get a mic, get a camera, and really figure out what you're passionate about and solve a problem. And just beat the drum every day. Volume, 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 volume. Like, and the money will come as well. Like, money flows. But I think you can't, in the initial phases, you can't chase money. Like, I've made over $250,000 from TikTok. I never chased the money. And now I make more money from that one platform than I know what to do with. I never chased the money. So it's mad.
Yeah, and I think you touch point on quite a couple of things over there that are essential. As you said, the fire and the drive. I think only an entrepreneur will tell you how long it takes until money actually starts to come. And it's not even about the length of the journey, but it's all of the lessons and everything you need to go through in order to get to the point where you say, yes, I'm consistently making money out of my business.
Yeah.
Personal brand, I think as much as people speak about it, I don't think that enough people implement it or give it enough attention as they should. And 3 is the consistency, is the fact that, as you said, unless you really want to get out of your comfort zone or you're so scared next year not to be in the same position as this year, you will not be consistent at it because it probably is lonely. It is actually quite lonely at the beginning. It is dreadful because you're doing something you don't know. So you need that fire. And
you do. The consistency is one of the biggest things, but consistency is backed and held up. The concrete of consistency is discipline. The reason I train every day incredibly hard is not to physically look good, although that's a byproduct. It is the self-whipping myself. It is that never losing my bite. Like, I don't have to get up at 5:30 every morning now. I don't. But every morning I'm up at 5:30 because I have to keep the fire burning. I cannot become complacent. And the consistency is what leads to results. And this is something that I don't think people can fathom. That if you want to get somewhere, you do have to be obsessed. I am obsessed about training. I am obsessed about content creation. I am obsessed about building Holder. I am obsessed about building Peak. I am obsessed about my education company. It's all I think about. But I can compartmentalize to then balance my life out with family, to go on holiday, to be with my parents, to, whatever, to go with my other half, our son, and, to go out on a day or whatever. I can compartmentalize, but the obsession never leaves, and you can't dip your toe in. You just can't. Andrew would have said the same. Andrew was obsessed about Pareto. Benji was obsessed about Connect. Nothing happens unless you get obsessed about it.
I think so. I think a lot of us, we call ourselves a bit delusional. You need to see it there before it even exists. And you need to be so obsessed until you actually bring it into existence.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of entrepreneurs speaking exactly about their goal as such an obsession until they achieve it. For me, it was also a bit about hit and miss. For me, it wasn't so much of an obsession. It was boredom, for example. I could not sit in one place for more than 1 year. I would get bored, either
Yeah.
of the environment, of the fact that I'm not growing fast enough, of the fact that I don't see a future over there. So I just kept leaving and kept quitting until I found something that was actually so challenging. And there wasn't a bonus at the end of the year, or there wasn't a promotion I was chasing. It was to make myself better. And I think what really got me obsessed is to never be in the same place that I was 12 months ago.
Yeah.
That is what I always look at. If I am a little bit ahead, or if I'm a lot ahead, I will remind myself to be grateful about this, as you
Yeah.
said, because right now, if I look back at my 20-year-old self, this would have just been only a dream. So every time I'm thinking about complaining about anything, I'm thinking about everything that I have right now is basically everything I dreamed of and everything I was really working for.
Yeah. It's untapped potential. I was the same in my job. I used to sit there. There was one point where I was sitting there. I was in one warehouse and I was sitting there on my phone. I was looking around and I just thought, I'm here for another 9 hours. What am I doing? And I just knew I had more in me. And some people know that from an early age. And so it irritates you because you think time's of the essence. And, you know, one thing that I've come to learn as I'm getting older, and like I say, I'm 33 now, but I understand priorities. Like, I don't want to be the richest person. I want just freedom all the time. I don't, my mentor is one of my best friends, Jason Greystone. I'm super blessed to have not only my mentor as my best friend, but someone that our values really align. He says always free. I say life by design. And that means knowing when's enough. Jason knows some incredibly wealthy people. I know some incredibly wealthy people. Andrew, I had a conversation with earlier today about, and we talk about this all the time, is that he's made more money than he's ever going to need. But it's not about the amount that's sitting in the bank, because, you can go online and you can listen to like pastors who have sat with people who have died. And there was one YouTube video where, a pastor had been with 1,000 people who had passed away. And he said, not one of them ever asks for anything they own. No one who's dying has ever said, "Oh, can you quickly grab me my Rolex?" All they talk about is, I wish I'd have been a better father. I wish I'd have gone on that holiday. When my kids kept bugging me to take them out, I wish I'd have done that. And when you realise like these things, that is what's important. It's not about who makes the most money. It's about who has time. Because you can't buy time. You can't invest time. You can only spend it. You don't have one more day. You have one day less. We have on average, we have 3,800 weeks in your lifetime. That's not a lot. So going back to the whole, I didn't want to conform. I didn't want to spend 10 days on average, 5 days a week, giving something I'm never getting back. I'm getting older. So yeah, I think when you can be very, very in tune with all of this and the bigger, I suppose, the bigger picture of life, then you can start to think more commercialized, thinking, right, in order to get the freedom, I must make my own money. How do I do that? Now, how do I do it? And, and that's a part of this whole journey. So, yeah.
I think all of it is a very good point. And I think time is actually quite complicated to explain to young people, the value of time, not time itself. But you think you have all of the time in the world right now. At least I used to when I was in my young 20s. And then fear is also another funny concept to explain, because you don't feel fear unless it's imminent. So you staying in your job thinking you're not going to progress in a year, that fear is a lot less than the fear you thinking I'm going to quit right now and I'm going to get outside my comfort zone and I'm going to build something, because that fear is, oh, I'm not going to get my paycheck at the end of the month, but it's a month. So then I think these concepts, you normally get them later in life, as you said.
I think about for today's age that we live in, this is really important to me at the moment, because I think we're in a really weird world at the moment. Like, it's getting more dangerous. So my other element of why I want to make money, like this company, building a tech company, you can go hard, you can go fast, you can exit, and you have a high multiplier within tech. So if you have a great business model and you tick loads of other boxes, I won't go into it, but you could basically sit on like a 25 times multiplier. So, if your company's doing if you have a valuation of 30, 40 million, you could exit over 100. Okay, so you have a great multiplier. If someone said to me, why do you want to build Holder? Yeah, I'm really passionate about it. But it's not like I wake up and I pray about Holder, but it's a means to an end, because I am aware the world that we live in now, we are finding out that more things are being revealed, files are being released, like pedestals of celebs and famous and government and corrupt politicians. The world is becoming more dangerous and very, very politically corrupt. So in order to escape this and to go live remotely where no one knows where I am, because that's what I'm doing, is that I need to create a means to an end. Building a company that I can sell and exit on my shareholding of 12 to 15 million net in the bank. I can then disappear. And my family, my grandkids will be fine, because I would know how to create longevity from 15 million net, say 15 million. So it's a means to an end. Because that's what I think other people need to think about, sort of like our age. We need to think, okay, the world is becoming tougher. How am I going to financially live when AI is going to do 86, 89, 90% of jobs across the world? What are people going to do? Like, what are they going to do? So that's something that I think about.
I think AI is, as you said, a very big topic that we're going to touch point a little bit later on. But speaking now about the people that would like to do this, that are thinking, I would like to live my life somewhere where no one can find me, myself included at some point. If they just want to start right now, we are looking at some achievable goals. You mentioned life by design. I'm assuming that you must have a structure behind it. Could you share some of the secrets for people to set realistic milestones in 90 days or a year? Or how would someone start planning this out?
Well, this one's an easy one for me because it's super simple. And again, I always scratch my head thinking, do people not know this? Because what I'm going to say is nothing new. The first thing is learn to stop keeping up with society. Number one, you don't need the Louis. My son said to me the other day, do you know what a Birkin bag is? I haven't got a clue. I've no idea what a Birkin bag is. No idea. You've got to get rid of that need for chasing what society has. Stop keeping up with the Joneses. That is number one, because you have to be defensive. So before you make money or you start thinking about how you build that first business or side hustle, you've really got to get rid of all your expenses that are costing you. Just very simply, the direct debits, the excessive spending. If you have a partner that spends money, divorce them, leave them. That's my honest answer. Just leave them. And then recalibrate. Live on less, invest the rest, right? And then it's really figuring out, okay, now how do I manage my salary? Like, how can I invest a good portion of my salary? How can I save it? How can I start creating a gateway, a runway, a buffer? How can I start getting money behind me? And that's just managing your actual salary. Then just looking at like basic banking structure. Just learn a financial, just become financially literate. Learn about money. I know it can be boring. And then once you've done that, then it's starting to think about, okay, what am I passionate about? Or what markets would I love to innovate or disrupt? Or would you like to build a personal brand? You can either build a service or a product-based business, or you could build a personal brand business. But you really have to serve people. I think that's the other thing. It's a really hard one for people to get their heads around, is that we're in such an obsessive, selfish world of, oh, look at me. You have to kind of get rid of that vanity, and then you have to go to become very self-serving. Sorry, not self-serving, serving other people. You have to become selfless, whether that be through a brand or a business. And then just looking at what you enjoy. Again, going back to making money, it can be anything. But there's 4 evaluations very quickly. Self-evaluation, again, have you got what it takes? Number 2, time evaluation, managing your time. If you don't know where your time's going, how could you ever run some form of a business? Number 3, financial, which we spoke about, getting your finances together. And then number 4, which is the key for me and massively underestimated, your social circle. Building an unstoppable network. I don't know everything about tech. But I'm very grateful and blessed now that I have a social circle that have sold tech businesses, that are involved in tech, that have already scaled tech, that are still in tech. never underestimate how many doors can be opened by building a social circle of winners. And those are the four things that I would focus on. And then just going back to what we spoke about, consistency, showing up, doing the work, stepping outside your comfort zone. Like, there's no secret to business. It's just doing it with no guarantees. And that's it every single day.
Within everything you just said, I think the last one that you touch point on, it's one of the most important things that people should look at, building your network, building your circles. And I mean, personally, as much as I mean professionally, I spend a lot of my time networking with people in my industry and outside my industry. But at the same time, I think the real change that happened in my life was when I had a very big cleanup in my personal circle through friends and family, and see if we align right now, and where I want to go, will we still align? And then really cutting up those friendships or marriages that you just mentioned. Anything that doesn't align with where you're going, you need to cut your losses. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of people give themselves excuses not to. And I definitely have quite a couple of ideas on this. But where do you think that people fail most at when they are trying to build their financial freedom?
Well, what you've just said is a big one, letting other people hold you back. Because again, it all ties into time. Time is of the essence. Launching a business, or like us, we have to go hard and fast. Time is of the essence. We can't have distractions. You can't have what I call rubber bands. You can't have people keep snapping you back to where you were. You can't have people reminding you of who you used to be, which is why I cut off one of my siblings. I don't talk to her at all, just cut her off. And, you have to realise, again, we're here for such a short period of time that you can't actually allow people to hold you back. So cutting off people is something that people say, well, I've known them for a long time, or they're a family. Oh, I can't cut. No, you can. You cut them off. You ring them up. If they're not good for you, they've got to go. And that will be one of the most refreshing things you do, because now you can feel that weight off your shoulder. It's like when I quit my job, I was like, oh my God, thank God for that. Yeah, look, my biggest point on that is just time is of the essence. Like, I just don't like wasting time, and zero distractions. I think one of the biggest things actually tying into this is, my God, stop consuming social media, create. And the average consumption time, is 4 hours a day. That over the year is something like 1,098 hours, something like that. It's about 1,098 hours. That's 42 days. People are losing a month because they're so distracted, rather than, I've got, you can either build or you can be a bystander. Mm-hmm. You can be distracted, you can be driven. You can consume or you can create. Again, going back to, you can do nothing in 6 months and be the same, or in 6 months you could have progressed in your life. Just very quickly, I talk about this and it does rattle some people, but we're very lazy as humans, and we don't like accountability. That's the problem. Have you not got any money? No, I've got no money. Why is that? Well, I spend takeaways. I go out all the time. It's Keir Starmer. That's why I don't have any money. It's the government. It's everyone else's fault, other than the individuals. Humans are very, very bad. The lack of accountability. And I think that's also a massive problem to why we have a majority that never really do too much, because it's so easier to go, oh, well, it's the government. It's, it's their fault. It's my parents. So that kind of irritates me that we don't have accountability. But I'm not going to change that. And I'm fully aware of that.
I think that is what makes a very clear separation a lot of the time when we're speaking about an entrepreneur and someone that actually fits the system. And I will actually put it into a very holistic way right now. I think it's all about self-love, leaving people behind, cutting people off, not staying in the same place, getting outside of your comfort zone, becoming a creator. For most people, they would put shame to it, or they would put lack of experience to it. All of this, lack of accountability and lack of self-love, because if you love yourself enough, you will cut out what doesn't work for you. And if you really want to change something, I always say everything in your life, it's in your power to change as long as you accept accountability for it. As you just mentioned, if you put it on the government or you put it on anything else that is outside your power, then you will say, well, I can never change my life
Yeah.
because it's not up to me. But when you start shifting this in your mindset that you are responsible for everything in your life, this is how you start seeing things differently.
Do you know, I am Marmite, and some people like me, some people don't. But that polarization creates that nice divide. It's why I grow, because I have push and pulls. I have diehard people that agree with me who needed that message, and other people who, it's like pouring vinegar on a wound. It's like, oh, I didn't like that, because I'm revealing, like, if I was to call you fat, you're not going to be offended. Why? Because you're not fat. But if you were fat, it's probably going to offend you because you're fat. And what I do and what I've come to realise is that because I'm here for a short period of time and I have self-love and I protect my peace, I'm going to do me. I'm going to talk about what I want online, and I don't care if I'm going to upset some guy in his basement in his mum's house. I'm not bothered. And there's two subjects which I recently spoke about, which I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of views. And I put it out knowing that I was going to upset some of my audience. But I wasn't bothered because it's a message that people need to hear. I get a lot of, Aaron, how do I deal with a bully? Or Aaron, how do I overcome? How do I deal with? How do I deal with? You don't deal with it. You should have had boundaries. But like, for example, shifting blame. I'm being bullied in the workplace. Right, okay. Do something about it then. What? Are you being bullied? Yeah. Do something then. Well, what do you mean? Sort it out. Sort it inside of work or sort it outside of work. Oh, because people enable it. People allow it. Cost of living crisis. There isn't one. I've said that, and this really triggers people. There is no cost of living. Look at London right now. Look at Piccadilly Square. People buying everywhere. Airports. Where is there a cost of living crisis? There is not. It's bad spending, and then getting home and going, well, no money. Yeah, because you spent it all today. And this is the problem again with why a lot of people don't change their situations, because again, lack of accountability. And it's not until you can go, right, this is my situation. I don't like it. That's where I'm going. I'm going to own all of the good, the bad, the ugly. And going forward, it's no one else's fault other than mine. Let's go. But they don't do that.
From my perspective, I had to become accountable from a very young age. And that has got me quite far in life for as old as I am. But the people that do take accountability, they will see what you're going through and they will respect that. And then the people that don't take accountability, they will call you lucky. They won't look at the fact that you did put on that sunscreen every summer and that you were cautious about some things, or that you were spending your extra hours this week not scrolling or watching Netflix, but trying to chase your dreams and trying to become better at filming and doing your own brand. All of these things, you don't see them unless you actually are accountable and unless you really want to break that pattern.
Again, going back to, you really have to want it, because I've really found that people who, I think they want more from life. They just know they haven't got it in them. So they like to judge and, well, prejudge, and assume things. Because what was really funny? I did a car video not too long ago, and I've had it a few times, but I'm just going back to the most recent time. And I was in my car, and I had my shades on, and I was wearing a blue jogger set. The jogger set was from Primark. The glasses I've had for years. My other half wants me to get rid of them because they're so battered. They're only from River Island. They're about 12 quid. But I have people, we have nice cars now. But years ago, I was driving really bad cars. So apart from the car, and someone put, oh, look at him in his designer clothing and designer glasses and, and the car. And he's saying that, you should do this and do this. He's clearly never had it hard. Yeah. And they just haven't got a clue. They paint their own picture and they've no idea of the journey and the hardship that's happened behind closed doors. And I think tying that in with anyone listening of thinking of embarking on this journey, that is something you will not escape, because building a business now, you will have to be on a camera. I don't care what anyone says now. Building a tech company, if I wasn't on camera, this will be impossible, because you just can't. You need to You need to create those opportunities, and that happens by being on a camera. So you have to put yourself out there, and with that will come hate. It's inevitable. And that's quite daunting for a lot of people. So anyone listening to this thinking, yeah, I'd like to start a business or build a side hustle, that's great, but just make sure that you've got thick skin, or that you're prepared to embrace the hate that will come your way. Because in the beginning, when nothing's happening and no one sees you and you haven't got a voice, it's not until you start breaching and you start getting yourself out there, until you've got a Reddit forum about you, you haven't made it. And that's when you've made it. You know, you will get hate when enough people are going against you. And that's when you know you're moving in the right direction. Some people don't like that. You know, some people haven't got the thick skin for it.
I think so. However, I do believe there are a lot of these people, right, that don't yet take the accountability, that would rather complain about their environment. I think that there is something in them that wants more, because they see you and maybe they are not able to share the joy with you, but they would love to go on this path. I know a lot of people that would love to try, but they either lack the guidance or the courage itself to get started. What would be your advice for getting them to start taking the first steps?
Be vulnerable. Drop the ego. Drop it. I think ego holds a lot of people back. They don't like to ask questions. They don't want to seem as it's weakness. You know, I've been that guy who has always asked questions. I've been fine to be. No, I've always known that I'm confident. I'm loud. You know, I know myself very well. But I'm fine to go on the reserve in the right rooms, to be the humble guy, to be the question guy, to ask. I hope you don't mind me asking. I'm not afraid to put myself out there. You know, I was trying to build a network for me specifically. I'm covered in tattoos. You know, I have the neck tattoo. I had to do that in London, building relationships with really prim and proper people, you know, and I had to do that with a neck tattoo. But as long as you show vulnerability, people will go, I see a bit of you and me when I was your age or when I was starting out. Whereas if you're sort of always, well, I knew that, you know, you're right. People do want it. And you can tell there are people who look at you thinking, yeah, I wish I had that. But they're not prepared to show that vulnerability, that level of, okay, I just need help. They're not prepared to do that because, again, ego holds them back, you know, pride or whatever it is. And unfortunately, that leads them up until the age of whatever, midlife crisis comes in, and then they look back on their life and regret. You know, that's the biggest thing for me. As humans, we can achieve so much. And I think what I want to say to people as well is that don't be scared of hearing the words entrepreneur, business owner, limited company, sole trader. Forget about all of that. Think of it like this. I want to achieve more. If you want to escape your job, I want to make more money on my own. Don't worry about business, because I think that scares a lot of people. All these big words, because they're associated with things. You know, a business, a limited company, I've got to have this, got to have tax, accountant, then I've got to have a warehouse, got to have an office. It's not. It's not. You know, we need to simplify things, I think, and then life becomes so much easier when you just simplify it and it's not so scary.
Yeah.
So,
and I think society itself designs this entrepreneurship, making it so scary and really trying to make people stop from going into this direction. And going back to having to build a network with tattoos on and everything, I remember when I was younger, my mom told me not to get anything on my neck or anything visible if you want to cover them with clothes. I mean, eventually it happened.
yeah.
But there are these moments at the beginning where you don't know anyone, but you have to go out there. It really humbles you. It is worth it, but it really does humble you at the beginning. And I think that is very good advice to really get over your ego.
It is. Anyone that would make a prejudgment. Do you know one of the comments that I've had loads is, oh, well, I'll never trust a guy with a neck tattoo. Fine. But believe me, if now we are comparing lives to you saying that to me, I have the better life, without hands down, because no one of decent value would ever say something like that. And we're not in a society where you can judge someone based on their looks, really, unless they're screaming, oh my, you know, you look at someone and you think, oh my God, you know, there is a judgment, of course, you know, but we are kind of beyond that now. We can see beyond that now. But again, opportunity isn't based on prim and proper anymore. We don't have to sit here doing this in a suit, both of us. We don't have to be wearing certain things. We can turn up as ourselves. And, like the landscape for opportunity is everything and anything now. So again, it's very accessible to anyone listening. Like, all of this is possible to all your listeners. Everything is possible. Again, but I think something else, perfection never comes. You just got to start. And then final point on like haters and stuff, some great bits of advice. Never argue with stupid. A man or a woman will never reach their destination if they stop to argue with every barking dog. And what is it? A lamb who puts he who makes himself a lamb amongst wolves will not survive the night, which is very much like the workplace. But there's loads of great quotes out there. But yeah, I mean, it's all, everything we're talking about is rewiring.
Yeah.
Like it's a total rewire,
I do, and I think I'm quite happy to see the way the newer generations are doing this. They don't look, as you said, at the proper and traditional way of doing business, and I think that creates so much opportunity that it wasn't there before, or it was there before, but people were too stuck in their own systems to see it. And now you see kids everywhere coming with new ideas and reinventing themselves by the way that they look, to the way that they speak. As to draw a parallel, black is my happy color.
Yeah.
So this is myself.
That's when you're happy.
Yeah, this is my happy color. But I agree with you. I think authenticity is so essential right now. And I see that from young entrepreneurs. And I see that this is one of the very main reasons why they're actually successful. But speaking now about the future, you mentioned that we are looking at a major change and disruption in about 2 years' time. Can you expand on why 2 years and what we can expect and what should we be actually aware of?
Well, I think the reason I say 2 years is because I think things now have dramatically changed. And I believe that there will just be this influx of people hitting the market of, let's use the word entrepreneurship, business, because there are going to be so many layoffs. Look at what Jeff Bezos is doing, his announcements of layoff, Google, Uber, just big corporations that have, hundreds of thousands of employees around the world being told now, and this is what's mad, the CEO of Uber has said that 7.6 million Uber drivers will be laid off. Now, that is publicly out there. But how many Uber drivers do you think are taking that seriously? London right now is building automated roads for automated cars. How many black cab taxi drivers are taking that seriously? Ignorance is bliss. Bury your head in the sand, leave the surfboard at home. There's a big ass wave coming, but I just, as long as my head's in the sand, I won't feel it. But you will. So I think in the next 2 years, I think people are going to really struggle. And I think the whole world, I wouldn't say I'm philosophical now, but I like to dive deeper into human psychology and the way of the world. And I think everything that's coming to light with everything happening in the world and the people that we've put on pedestals and the monarchy and just everything's coming to light. And I think people, even with the workplace, there's so much information and independent reporting. And big CEOs who were going on big podcasts saying, yeah, you're all going to be made redundant. People go, no, yeah. He's just said you're going to be made redundant. Yeah, but I won't, will I? No, you will. And what are you doing about it? Like, what is the plan? People aren't making plans. So I think this is going to happen in the next 2 years. So I think people must not be stagnant. They must learn new skill sets. What is it, the COO or CEO? No, I think it was the COO of Google sent out an email to 25,000 staff saying, learn AI and adopt it or you'll be replaced by it. He sent that to the employees, 25,000 employees. And so what happens when you have this mass redundancy within the next 2 years? What are they all going to do? I'm not financially free, haven't got enough in my pension. I need to make money. Oh, quick scramble, give me the phone, give me the camera. But the problem is people like me and you, we've already developed the trust. We've already established ourselves. It's going to be really hard for people to come and try and take it from us because we're already here. Because at that point, with the amount of AI, no one's going to trust anything. So people who have already put themselves in a position of trust, we're going to lean towards them rather than all these new people coming through. And we don't know whether they're robots or not. So I think that will be in the next 2 years. But as crazy as it is, even with everything that I've said, there will still be people that will not do anything about it.
How should someone assess if their job is threatened or how quickly and how badly that is? What kind of questions to ask themselves?
I think is it repetitive? I think if you go into your job and you open up a laptop or you're doing a movement or a motion or a process that is the same every day, that's worrying. If you were doing something totally different every single day, okay, it probably can't be instantly replicated. But if it is process based, like my old job isn't there anymore. And that's crazy because what I was doing every day was very process based. It was the same thing over and over again. So I think that's number one, is looking at, is it repetitive? If it is, that's probably a sign that at some point either a robot or some piece of software or API integration will do it. I think looking at how much you actually bring to the table. So for example, if you're in a call center and you're outbound sales, I think you've got to look at how many sales you actually bring in the company. If a robot or an AI software could make your outbound sales and be great, could they close 100,000 a month like you do? If you're just ticking the box of you're just meeting sales a month, is it worth then your salary of 50, 60,000, 70,000 a year versus a robot that will do it 24/7 to every single country? Yeah, the revenue might not be as much what they're bringing in, but they're not outlaying that 60,000 in a salary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just need to, it's obvious. And if I didn't answer that, go on to ChatGPT and type in, is my job at threat? And it'll probably tell you it is.
People are looking to do these changes today. And based on everything we spoke, they are thinking, okay, my job is a threat right now. I might be vulnerable. What can I do?
I think you need to look at working towards residual income, right? I think you need to really understand with your job, because there's so many jobs out there, right? So people might be doing many, many different things and different salaries and all this kind of stuff. Anyone listening, ask yourself the question and be honest. Are you only paid when you clock in? And then when you clock out, if your pay stops, and that is you, and that when they sign off, the pay stops, that is your first indicator to go, okay, I need to make sure that if I'm going to keep my job and my job's safe, fine, and I enjoy it, but I need to make sure I'm creating a safety net that when I leave my job and I go and do whatever, I'm still getting residual income. So that's the first thing. If your pay stops as soon as you clock out, that's your first little sign to say, okay, I need something else. Just even if it's one other thing. I think fast and hard self-education. The other thing is, for anyone listening, and to tie it in with your question, is that everyone has access to ChatGPT, to podcast, to YouTube, to everything, to learn what they need to know. So no one listening to this could say, I don't know how. It's one of my worst questions. I hate that question. But how? What do you mean, but how? Learn. And also, just to put everyone's mind at ease who might be slightly older, even if you're in your 40s and 50s, it's not game over. You're still in the game. I think that's the other thing. Some people go, oh, well, I'm too old now. You're not. The runway is just shorter. So you've got to have more thrust. You've got to have your turbos on or whatever, and you've got to be more calculated to take off. But self-education is my answer to that, is that immediately after this podcast or whenever, you need to learn. You need to sit down 1 hour every day, learn about something to do with business, something to do with marketing, content creation, AI. It doesn't matter. Mix it up. But just every day, learn, expand your mindset.
Even if it is more challenging for people in their 40s and 50s than it used to be then to break into the business, because now the technology has evolved so quickly that the discrepancy is just getting bigger and bigger. you do see them actually coming on social media. This is one of the things why I wouldn't take these kind of excuses from any younger people. If I can see my parents on social media, my dad is trying to start his YouTube show.
Yeah.
My mom befriended ChatGPT like there's no tomorrow because I said, look, you can learn about this. And now she figures out that she can have all of the answers. If I can see my parents do this, no one else younger than that can have an excuse that you don't know how to or that you don't have the time to.
Look at Benji's 89-year-old granny.
Yeah,
She's
you
one of the
mentioned.
biggest creators. Like, she's absolutely crushing it. I just can't remember her name. But, she's absolutely smashing it. She's earning a fortune.
No.
Earning a fortune. Like one of the best things I ever did is start a YouTube channel. I started it, 5 years ago. And don't ever let anyone tell you that something's oversaturated. That irritates the living daylights out of me. When people say, oh, well, it's oversaturated, I wouldn't do it. What? I just don't get it. Like the market of YouTube and socials is so big. It's in its infancy. Like it's only just started. But yeah, like start and yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter what age. Your life gets really good when you start because it's the beginning of something exciting and it's not meant to be easy either.
No.
Like you wouldn't want it easy.
And you're also saying there's no such thing as perfection. You have to start. You will get better at it as you're in it, as you're actually practicing. But you have to start. Don't wait for that perfect moment, for that perfect opportunity, for the sunny day to have the great light outside to start filming yourself.
You just get going and you take opportunity. Like that's the other thing is jump at opportunity. Say no to the right things. Like you have to understand that there has to be a fair exchange in any relationship, working relationship, personal. There has to be a fair exchange. But jump at opportunity. I always say, like the team we're building at Holder, I say to everyone, we're just taking on someone in sales. I say, all I need you to be is a door opener. Open doors. That's it. Just keep opening doors. Try and see beyond the immediate. Like you might think, oh, I don't really think that's going to be a great. See if it can just open up a door. Because you just never know, this is, and you learn everything we're talking about. You learn it along the way, right? This is stuff of years combined, I'm sure. But yeah, I wouldn't go back to a job now. That's for sure. Not now.
Fair enough. And I will get to it in a second, but I just want to wrap up the topic on AI. There's clearly going to be a lot of changes, but in the next decade, what do you think it remains a human advantage?
So my personal take, where a lot of my focus is YouTube. I'm very big on YouTube long form because I believe and I would say over the next 5 years more so. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of seeing AI content. I think people will struggle when it comes to dating because you don't know who's real. So people will question everything. I think people will question profiles. Now, what's really hard to replicate is a long video like this. You can't. It's going to be very hard to get a real perfect AI to do this for this long. Like the movement, just the way that we are, the clunkiness. So that's where a big piece of my focus is because I believe at some point, with the amount of AI and robots and wiping out jobs, I believe that everything will come full circle where people will want community like tribes again.
We are going back to basics. Yeah.
Which is why with Holder, one of our things that cannot be replicated is we have a big thing building around community. And that was very strategically done because I do feel that eventually people will want that human. I think people will travel more to meet a human. So YouTube, you can really build that connection and it's very hard to replicate on long video. So over the next 5 years, I think platforms, because everything will be online, live streaming and YouTube. And that is where a big, big percentage of my everyday now and for the foreseeable for the next 5 to 10 years will be YouTube and live streaming to show that immediate connection of human and human element. And the money will seriously flow as well. So that's where my focus is.
Now to take it back to yourself a little bit, you said that you are a self-educated professional. What shaped your thinking in this way?
I think going back to, because I didn't like school, I understood that I obviously didn't fit into that way of learning. And I think we all realise that now. One teacher for, say, 40 kids with all different needs and ways of learning, it just doesn't work. But I really take pride in learning myself. And, if I need to know something, again, going back to what I just said about self-education, is that I was quite excited to go and teach myself something new, which I could then implement, which would then move me on to the next level. So when I was traveling to work, I've never been a big reader, apart from Harry Potter books. That's a secret. But I love listening to Audible books. So I listen to, I've done over 196 books now that I've listened to. A lot of them were about money, business, property, entrepreneurship, mindset. And I just got a bit of a buzz from it. I like being in the gym, listening to a book. I just thoroughly enjoy teaching myself because I'm also an action taker. So I like getting the information and then going and doing it. I get a buzz from it. I've never been what I call a librarian. I don't hoard information and then, what they call shelf development. I'm not one of those. So, yeah, self-education was a big part. And on the money side of it, I didn't come from a family of money, so I wanted to learn about money. I'm the only entrepreneur in my family. So, and I can thank Audible books for that. So, yeah, I loved it.
I quite like them as well. And I started listening to them every time I travel or in the gym as well. But I think we have that in common. I firstly have a very selective memory. So if it's not going to suit me right now, or if there's not necessarily useful information, my memory will just leave it. And then sitting in the class and just absorbing all of that theory never worked for me. So I'm very practical. And the second you listen to some books and you think that you can start the trial and error at the beginning with all of it, it's so much more exciting.
Yeah.
And then eventually you keep going on that track. I think about entrepreneurship, about business, and pretty much everything in the last 5 years was self-education. And I think that has given me 10 times more than the academic system itself. I think it's good to a certain degree, but I think it lacks the practical side of things.
It does. But then, that's the whole system. They say, is the system broken? But then there's that other saying, isn't it? The system's working fine. It's churning out worker bees. But that's a good quality to have that you just said, is that knowing to learn in your segments. So if you need to know something, learn it, immediately and then move on. Don't start spending your time learning about all different things that aren't relevant to where you are in your journey. That's a really good quality to understand very early on, is that rather than filling your brain with loads of random stuff, make it more immediate to what you're doing. That's actually what I did. I did it in a methodical way that aligned with where I was at the time. And the other thing is as well, when people say, well, what about mentors? I can't afford a mentor. Again, going back to Audible books, you have someone who's incredibly successful in your ear. They share most of it. Now, I never used to have mentors, but now I've had a mentor, who's, again, Jason, but I only use him for like tiny bits of information. But they're really important things that I just don't know, or I don't want to get from ChatGPT. I want a real life experience. I want the rawness of what actually happened. And I just take little bits, and then I don't need something for the next couple of months. So that's the benefit as well. Learning from mentors and stuff like that is you get real world, real life experiences. So look, again, the best saying, you don't know what you don't know. So you couldn't even fathom or dream of building a business if you don't know how to do it. But the information is at our fingertips. So yeah.
And get better at learning what you don't know. My partner used to say this all the time: unless you don't know what you don't know, you don't know what kind of questions you need to ask.
And don't work on your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time. I can't put up a shelf. I have no idea how to put up a shelf. I haven't got a clue. I couldn't put a door handle on. I am no good at DIY. But I get the guy in to do DIY.
But you're not good at it.
But I know I'm not good at it. And something else actually about building a business, which is important for people to hear. Save enough money for your startup or whatever it is to outsource.
Mm.
Get an editor, get a videographer, get a VA, a virtual assistant, build a team. That's so important. You know, as soon as I could take on my mum full time in my YouTube, my mum's full time in my YouTube. I've got a VA, I've got my editor, I've got 2 editors, I've got my videographer, someone else, I'm sure of it. But you know, like I built a team that straight away. So reinvest. I'd spent 6,000 something like £6,900 when I was only at 800 subs on YouTube. I didn't make a penny, but I just knew. It was going to be worth it, and I've made tenfold that now. And if anyone's wondering, well, how did you get the 6,900? Well, because I saved my entire life.
Yeah.
Because I've not been a spender, so that's how I had that money. So yeah. Work on your strengths, not on your weaknesses.
And with everything that you know right now, what advice would you give yourself, your 25-year-old self, or when you just properly started your business?
I was already good at this, but I would have done it more. Live life like a hermit. Don't leave your house. Don't get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Don't just, if you want to be successful in your own definition, like if you want more from life, from 19 to 25, just live life like a hermit. That's what I do now. 0 distractions, 0 consumption, extremely strong boundaries. I say no all the time. I'm super picky. And if you are so focused and you become so obsessed at the earliest age, by 30, you could be incredibly wealthy, incredibly successful, have everything you want if you do it in your earlier years. Anyone who's younger, I always say, try and just cut off all the noise, live life like a hermit, and just build.
Yeah.
You know, physically, mentally, and professionally.
I think
Yeah.
that's when it starts compounding, and it can go in either direction, really, with the
Yeah.
wrong kind of people and the wrong kind of distraction, and you compound into a life that you're not happy about, or you can slowly start taking the steps. And I think you can do that obviously at any age, but if you start doing it when you're younger, you will thank yourself later on.
You know, just quickly, where I've had some controversial content around when I've spoken about don't travel when you leave college and university. So I didn't go to college, I didn't go to university, and then this debate came up one day where, because university to me is a total waste of time, and again, that's big debates that I've had. But one of the things that really sparked a piece of content up was where I said, yeah, when you leave college and university, don't travel, build something for yourself. And I said that because, you know, if you have rich parents, fine, whatever. But I'm not talking about people who have rich parents. I don't see the benefit of booking a flight to Bali in Australia when people say, yeah, but it's the experiences. Yeah, but, you know, that's when you're at your best to ride an elephant or swim with a dolphin and get these photos. And I think, yeah, but if you look at what happens, these people have then got to come back, find a job and then catch up on the hamster wheel. Whereas what I think is better is when you're hungry and you're that age, you've got that energy, you've got that drive, you've got that lively sort of feeling about you, right? You've got the energy. 19 to 25, if you go all in and you do the right things, by 25, you can travel wherever you want in the world. And I really think that is how you set your life up in a world that is becoming incredibly difficult. Because that's what happened for me. You know, I'm now in a position where, you know, I was featured in a paper, The Metro most recently, about, and other papers, about going on holiday 4 or 5 times a year now. We just book a holiday. And then the day after, we're in some beautiful cove on jet skis. And because I'm able to do that now, if I had done the whole travelling and fart-arsed about, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. So that's my real belief. Build. Avoid the distractions of society. Set yourself up and then live your life.
And I think all of this just circles back to what we were speaking at the beginning of this, your why.
Yes. Yeah.
How much do you want something and why do you want it? And I think at that point, you will be willing to do all of the sacrifices if you have to make them early age. But your why is your driving force in life.
You have to have your why.
Aaron, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.